You know that person? The one who seems to just smile a little too much? I know, it sounds awful to say, but stick with me. There's something about them that feels almost too good to be true. They're the first to laugh at your jokes, even the ones that you know deep down didn't land. They agree with every opinion you have, nodding enthusiastically. They shower you with compliments that feel just a little too frequent, a little too saccharine. They are always, and I mean always, available, always accommodating. They're the human equivalent of a welcome mat. And at first, it feels incredible. You think, wow, finally, someone who just gets me, someone who's genuinely kind, thoughtful, and just so easy to be around. You feel seen, you feel appreciated, you feel safe. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, something starts to feel off. A weird tension begins to bubble just beneath that smooth, pleasant surface. You can't explain it, but you start to feel like you're walking on eggshells. You find yourself carefully choosing your words. Not because they've ever been critical, but because their constant agreeableness makes any form of dissent feel like a monumental betrayal. And before you know it, you're caught in this invisible web. It feels strangely manipulative, deeply confusing, but you can't for the life of you point to a single thing they've done wrong. They're the nice one, after all. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most profoundly misunderstood traits in human psychology. We're not talking about kindness. We're not talking about empathy or compassion. We're talking about niceness. That compulsive, often unconscious, need to please others, even if it means sacrificing your own authenticity to do it. And we're going to look at this through the powerful lens of Carl Jung's psychology of the shadow, to reveal why this niceness isn't just a personality quirk. It's a carefully constructed mask. And understanding what lies behind that mask could honestly save you years of emotional turmoil. Whether it's in your friendships, your romantic relationships, or even your career. So stick with me. Because by the end of this, you'll not only know how to spot this dynamic from a mile away, but you'll also understand the hidden dangers of the person who is just a little too nice. Most of us are raised to believe that nice equals good. It's simple, right? But the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung would lean back and say, not so fast. For Jung, what we call niceness is often just the persona. The persona is the curated version of ourselves we present to the world. It's our public face, the mask we wear to gain social acceptance, to be liked, to be approved of, to fit in. It's our Instagram profile, our polite customer service voice, our everything's fine smile. But what happens when that persona isn't just a part of you, but the only part you allow anyone to see? What happens when the mask is so tightly glued on that you don't even know who you are without it? That's where the danger begins. Because behind that mask, another part of us is being shoved into the darkness. A part that Jung called the shadow. Maybe you're nodding along right now because this feels eerily familiar. You once knew someone, a friend, a partner, a coworker, who was so relentlessly sweet it felt brittle, almost fake. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, they just snapped. Or they ghosted you, disappearing without a trace. Or maybe they became cold, distant, and started making these little passive-aggressive jabs that left you spinning, wondering, what on earth did I do wrong? I want you to hear this loud and clear. It likely wasn't about you at all. Their niceness was never a true expression of affection. It was a strategy, a performance born out of a deep, primal fear, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being disliked, the fear of being truly seen and found wanting. And when that survival strategy, that performance, stops getting them the validation they crave, the mask begins to crack. That's when the shadow, the part they've hidden from everyone, including themselves, inevitably steps onto the stage. And its appearance is profoundly destabilizing, especially if you, the audience, never even knew it was there. So let's really break down this idea of the persona. Think of it as your personal ambassador. It's the you that goes to job interviews, the you that meets your partner's parents for the first time, the you that makes small talk at a party. It's a necessary and healthy tool for navigating social situations. We all have one. But for the compulsively nice person, the persona isn't a tool, it's a fortress. They are trapped by it. Their mask of constant agreeableness, of unwavering positivity, is doing all the heavy lifting in their relationships. Meanwhile, their real, authentic self, with all of its messy, inconvenient, and beautiful complexities, is locked away, exiled to the shadows. But here is the fundamental problem, and it's the core of everything we're talking about today. The shadow does not stay silent forever. You cannot suppress parts of your own humanity without them eventually demanding to be heard. Imagine it like this. If you spend your entire life trying to be the perfect friend, the perfect partner, smiling through your own discomfort, bottling up your real opinions, and dodging any and all disagreement just to keep people from leaving you, you aren't building character. You're building pressure. You're suppressing. And what you suppress doesn't just disappear. It ferments. That exiled shadow, full of a lifetime of resentment, unmet needs, suppressed anger, jealousy, insecurity, and unspoken truths, starts to curdle. It begins to leak out. But because the person is terrified of direct, honest confrontation, it doesn't come out as, "Hey, you hurt my feelings," or "I actually disagree with that." Instead, it seeps out sideways. It comes out as cutting sarcasm disguised as a joke. It comes out as the silent treatment. It comes out as guilt-tripping, making you feel responsible for their unspoken unhappiness. It comes out as sudden, unexplained mood swings that leave you feeling perpetually off balance. This is precisely what makes the chronically nice person so emotionally treacherous. It's not that they are secretly evil or malicious. In fact, it's far more tragic than that. It's that they are incapable of being honest, even with themselves. They are operating from a deep-seated belief that if they showed you their truth, if they admitted that they feel hurt, or used, or that they want something more, or that they simply don't agree with you, you would immediately abandon them. So instead of risking that rejection, they smile, they accommodate, they agree. And all the while, they stew. They silently build a case against you in their mind, and then they try to get their needs met indirectly, through subtle manipulation, through strategic flattery, through martyrdom, or through a chilling, punishing silence. You simply cannot build a real, authentic connection with a mask. And when you're on the receiving end, you think you're being given love, but what you're actually getting is an invitation to a performance. A play where your role is to be the mirror, constantly reflecting back the validation and approval that their persona so desperately needs to survive. And in that dynamic, there's no room for the real you either. So, we've established this difficult truth. The compulsively nice person is wearing a mask, the persona, to hide their authentic self and all its inconvenient truths, which get shoved into the shadow. And we know this suppressed shadow eventually leaks out as passive aggression, guilt-tripping, and a general vibe of confusing manipulation. But here's where Jung's insights get even more profound, and frankly, a little spooky. He believed that the shadow, all those parts of ourselves that we reject and disown, doesn't just stay inside us. It gets projected. Projection is a psychological defense mechanism where a person unconsciously takes their own unacceptable qualities or feelings and attributes them to someone else. In simpler terms, a person who has completely disowned their own darkness will often, without even realizing it, accuse you of having it. Let's paint a picture. Have you ever been in a situation with a super sweet, accommodating friend who suddenly turns on you? You might have set a small, perfectly reasonable boundary. Maybe you said, "Hey, I can't hang out tonight. I really need a quiet evening alone." A healthy person would say, "Okay, no problem. Talk to you tomorrow." But the people pleaser, whose entire strategy is built on never prioritizing their own needs, can't compute this. Their suppressed shadow, which is screaming for a day off and is resentful that it never gets one, suddenly sees an opening. And then it happens. They look at you, their sweet smile gone, and say something like, "You're always so selfish. It's always about what you need." Or maybe, "It must be nice to be able to just cancel on people. Some of us actually care about our commitments." Whoa. The accusation feels like it comes from another planet. It's so wildly out of proportion to the situation that it gives you emotional whiplash. You're standing there thinking, "Selfish. I'm the one who has bent over backwards for this person for months." And you're right. But you have to understand, in that moment, they are not speaking to you. They are speaking to a reflection. They are literally arguing with their own shadow, but they're seeing its face on you. Their own disowned selfishness, their own buried resentment for being so committed. They can't stand to see it in themselves, so their mind unconsciously throws it onto you like a movie projector. This is why these interactions are so destabilizing. It's a form of psychological gaslighting. You're being punished for a crime you didn't commit. In fact, you're being punished for the very crime they are committing against themselves every single day. Their shadow is essentially whispering in their ear, "I feel so selfish for wanting a day off, and I'm so angry that I never get what I want." But their persona can't accept that, so it translates the message and screams at you, "You are selfish. You always get what you want." They're fighting an internal war, and they're making you the enemy soldier. You can't win an argument against someone's projection, because the argument isn't actually about you. It's about their refusal to accept their own humanity, their own anger, their own desires, their own envy, and their own shame. They've spent a lifetime, often since childhood, learning that those feelings are bad or unlovable, and that being nice is the only way to stay safe and earn love. But that safety comes at an impossible price: the truth. And authentic connection cannot exist where truth is forbidden. So how do you spot this early? How do you break the illusion before you're deep inside that confusing web? You have to learn to look past the performance and spot the subtle tells, the micro signals that reveal when someone's niceness is a survival strategy, not a soul trait. The truth is always hiding in plain sight. You just have to train your perception. First, start with the energy. A genuinely kind and secure person has range. They can be warm, but they can also be firm. They can be open and engaged, but they can also be quiet and reserved. Their energy feels grounded and real. It's not on all the time. The people pleaser's energy, however, often feels suspiciously polished. It's an endless, almost frantic broadcast of positivity and agreeableness. They rarely, if ever, express their own discomfort, and they rush to fix problems that weren't even problems to begin with, just to smooth over any potential for friction. It's the emotional equivalent of a pristine, sterile show home that nobody actually lives in. It looks perfect, but it feels empty. Second, watch for the mirroring. This is a big one. At first, it's intoxicating. They seem to love everything you love. They adopt your slang, your opinions on movies, your core values. It feels like you found your soulmate because it's just so easy. But after a while, you get a nagging feeling that something isn't landing. You feel strangely unseen, even though they're constantly agreeing with you. That's because you're not talking to a person. You're talking to a version of them that was custom built for you. They are reflecting you back to yourself to win your approval. This is not connection. It's camouflage. Third, look for the behavioral cracks. These are the small giveaways. They over-apologize for things that are clearly not their fault. They laugh nervously at jokes made at their expense that you can tell actually hurt them. They struggle profoundly to say no to even the smallest request. But you can feel the resentment simmering later. And most telling of all, they can make you feel guilty just for being honest or having a different opinion. Their disappointment when you don't agree with them is a powerful, manipulative tool designed to pull you back into line. But here's the catch, and it's the most important part of this entire conversation. You will never spot these patterns clearly and consistently in others until you are willing to look for them in yourself. Because everything is a mirror. If you find yourself repeatedly attracting these emotional performers, if this story is hitting you hard because you've lived it more than once, you have to ask yourself the tough questions. Where am I still performing for love? Where am I still terrified of being disliked? Where am I still using my own niceness as a shield to keep the peace, to avoid abandonment, or to feel worthy of a place in someone's life? And this brings us to the most powerful tool you have to change this pattern for good. It's not about building walls or becoming cynical. It's about doing your own inner work. Carl Jung called it integrating the shadow. It is the practice of turning on the lights in your own basement. You cannot see someone else's mask clearly if you are still unconsciously wearing your own. If you do, you'll constantly mistake performance for presence. You'll romanticize their intense agreeableness and call it loyalty. And you will keep finding yourself drawn to people who are a perfect energetic match for your own unresolved wounds, the part of you that is still on its knees, begging to be accepted. So, we've reached the most crucial turning point. We've unmasked the too nice person. We understand the dangerous dynamic of the persona and the shadow, and we've faced the uncomfortable truth that if we keep attracting these performers, it's because a part of us is also on stage. This is where so many of us get stuck. We become experts at spotting the mask on others, but we remain strangers to our own. The solution, the only way to truly break the cycle, is to turn inward. It's a process Carl Jung called integrating the shadow, and it's the most powerful work you will ever do. But what does shadow work actually look like? It sounds intimidating and mysterious, but in practice it's about taking radical, courageous steps towards self-honesty. It's about cleaning the mirror so you can finally see your own reflection clearly. First, it looks like radical solitude. And I don't mean loneliness. I mean intentionally creating time and space where no one else's energy, opinions, or needs are in your field. In our hyper-connected world, this is a revolutionary act. It's turning off your phone, closing the laptop, and just being with yourself. Why? because your nervous system needs to calm down enough for the truth to surface. When you're constantly reacting to others, you can't hear your own voice. In the quiet of solitude, you can finally ask, what do I actually feel? What do I actually want? Without the static of someone else's approval. Second, it looks like confrontational journaling. This isn't a Dear Diary entry about your day. This is a brave, private conversation with the parts of you that you've been shunning. It's sitting down with a pen and paper and asking the questions that make you flinch. Questions like, where in my life am I being nice instead of being real? Who am I still trying to impress? And what am I afraid would happen if I stopped? What is a boundary I'm terrified to set, and why? If I allowed myself to feel my anger without judgment, what would it tell me? Be brutally honest. No one is going to read it. This is where you give your shadow a voice, a safe space to speak its truth without fear of punishment. Third, and this is perhaps the most difficult step, it looks like sitting with your discomfort. Our society teaches us to bypass uncomfortable feelings with positive affirmations, distractions, or quick fixes. Shadow work asks you to do the opposite. It asks you to allow yourself to actually feel your anger without immediately judging it as wrong. To feel your jealousy without moralizing it. To feel your sadness without trying to suppress it. Imagine the emotion is a storm cloud. Your instinct is to fight it or run from it. Instead, just sit and let it rain. Feel it in your body. Where does the anger live? In your tight jaw? Your clenched fists? Where does the sadness sit? In the lump in your throat. By allowing yourself to feel these energies without acting on them or suppressing them, you integrate them. You take their power back. They no longer have to leak out sideways because you've finally given them permission to exist. The more you do this, the more you welcome all parts of yourself back home, the less reactive you become to the outside world. And then, almost like magic, you stop attracting the masks, because your own energetic frequency has changed. Your vibration is no longer broadcasting the message, "I'll fake it if you do." You start seeing through the performance in others, not with cynicism or paranoia, but with a calm, discerning clarity. You can feel the difference between someone who is being nice to be liked and someone who is being kind because they are secure. And here's the best part. Once you do this inner work, you realize you don't need to spend so much energy protecting yourself anymore. You won't even get close to these draining dynamics because they will naturally fall out of resonance with you. It's like you've been listening to a chaotic, static radio station your whole life, and you finally retune your dial to a clear, calm frequency. The static is still out there, but you're just not tuned into it anymore. Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the heart of it all. As long as your disowned shadow is running the show from behind the scenes, you will call its creations fate. You'll say, "Why do I always attract manipulative people?" Or, "It's just my luck to end up with friends who ghost me." But it's not fate. It's an unconscious pattern playing out, drawing people to you who perfectly mirror the parts of yourself that you have abandoned. When you do the work to reclaim your anger, your voice, your boundaries, your pain, when you bring those hidden parts back into the light of your own consciousness, the pattern dissolves. You stop being an energetic match for people who need you to be a mirror for their performance. You're no longer performing either. You're not bending yourself into a pretzel for a crumb of approval. You're not nice anymore. You're real. And real energy doesn't have to chase or convince. It simply resonates. So how do you build relationships from this new, authentic space? It's simple, but it's not always easy. You start looking for people who aren't afraid to lovingly disagree with you. You value the friend who can say, "You know, I actually see that differently," more than the one who blindly agrees with everything. You notice who respects your boundaries, especially your no, without trying to guilt or manipulate you. Their respect for your limits is a direct reflection of the respect they have for their own. You pay attention to how people talk about others when they aren't in the room. Is it with compassion and nuance, or with judgment and gossip? And you learn to value the people who can just be with you. People who can sit in a comfortable silence without rushing to fill the void with empty flattery or nervous chatter. When a person is whole within themselves, you will feel it in your bones. Their presence is grounded. They don't need your constant approval because they already approve of themselves. They won't crumble if you have a different need or opinion. They aren't trying to sell you an image of themselves. They're just showing up as they are. And that grounded, non-performative presence is what your nervous system has been craving all along. Not the drama, not the intensity, not the perfect mask, but a real, authentic soul. As you move forward, remember this one thing. Your relationships are a mirror. And when you finally do the work to clear the fog from your own reflection, you'll begin to see others not as you wish they were, but as they truly are. And that, my friends, is when your life becomes rich, deep, and beautifully, authentically free. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear this today. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever trusted someone who was too nice, only to be blindsided later? This is a safe space to share, and your story might be the validation someone else needs to recognize the signs. And finally, if you're ready for more deep, raw conversations about psychology, energy, and what it really means to be human, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We're not just making content here. We're building a community of people who are ready to wake up. Thanks for being here.